Please welcome to the stage, Cynthia Leitz.
Everyone, did y'all have a good lunch? That was great. Great lunch, great conversation. It's really an honor to be here today. So like AmeriCorps, my story of service started just a little over 30 years ago. I remember fondly listening to stories about my grandmother's favorite cousin who committed her life to international service. Then in high school, we were required to take a course on civic engagement that had a 30-hour service requirement. While many of my friends moaned and complained about the content and the additional work, they thought I was a complete nerd because this was my absolute favorite class. So something was already stirring in me. As I prepared for college, I knew I wanted to make a difference, so I studied psychology and social work and planned to join the Peace Corps upon graduation. Well, as it is with many of our young dreams, there were some interruptions along the way. With less intention than my plans to serve, I accidentally fell in love and was engaged by the end of college. My partner did not want to wait for me to participate in the Peace Corps to start our life together, and AmeriCorps was not an option back 32 years ago. So instead, he supported me as I pursued a master's degree in social work so that I could serve, but in a different capacity. Although my pathway to service was altered a bit, we do celebrate our 32nd anniversary next month, so I guess it turned out okay. For the next 10 years, it was truly a privilege to work with families involved in the public child welfare systems, first in Illinois and later in Arizona. These families invited me to be a part of their lives during a particularly difficult time, and it was the most meaningful work of my life. I hope that I made a difference for these families, but what I can say without a doubt is that they made a difference for me. Because of this service, I developed critical thinking skills that allowed me to think bigger about solutions to complex social problems. I was exposed to diverse communities and varied constellations of family systems, helping me to become more inclusive. I saw systemic racism and oppression firsthand and became compelled to advocate for structural change. I learned to lead by listening first and developed an enhanced capacity for empathy. And I found a way to heal from my own childhood trauma as I was able to find meaning in the ways these experiences helped sensitize me to the needs and the capacity for resilience of others. Service means putting the needs of another above our own. And yet, while we do this for others, we end up fundamentally transformed. In fact, because of how we are impacted, national service may just be the antidote to the divisive politics we are experiencing today. After 10 years of working directly with children, youth, and families, I left practice to move into higher education so that I could help prepare the next generation of servant leaders. 20 years later, it is my distinct pleasure to now lead a college with over 7,000 students studying undergraduate or graduate degrees, preparing them for a variety of disciplines across public service. At Arizona State University's Watts College of Public Service and Community Solutions, we tell our students that they do not have to wait to graduate to make a difference. In fact, all of our undergraduate students are required to have at least one hands-on service learning experience before they graduate. Through internships or other opportunities, our students contribute over 600,000 hours of service each year. And in addition to our academic programs, we also, I'm very proud to say to this particular group, host 7 AmeriCorps programs in our college. Our Public Allies program has increased capacity for nonprofit organizations in Phoenix and Tucson through the work of over 600 members who have contributed 1 million hours of service since its inception. We also have 3 AmeriCorps programs focused on preventing gender-based violence. These programs collectively have placed almost 800 members in local domestic violence agencies across Arizona who have provided close to 700,000 hours of service. And then the Legacy Corps for veterans and military families works with 16 nonprofit agencies across 10 states to support veterans and their families, through which over 5,000 AmeriCorps members have provided over 2 million hours of direct service to veterans and their families. Thank you to Robert Ashcraft, Jill Messing, and David Swindell for their leadership of these meaningful programs. Considering the positive influence of service on the community and of service on its members, these programs represent real impact. As we celebrate 30 years of national service and look forward to the future, I do believe that building strong collaborations with colleges and universities is an important pathway for increasing the capacity for national service. Had this opportunity been available to me 32 years ago, AmeriCorps most definitely would have been a part of my story of service. President Clinton, thank you for your commitment to national service and for the incredible impact of the past 30 years. We are here to help you sustain and grow this important work for the next 30 years as national service remains an essential ingredient to building a stronger democracy. Thank you.
Please welcome to the stage moderator, Dr. Victoria DeFrancesco Soto, Mark Guerin, Secretary John King, and Flor Romero for our next conversation.
Good afternoon. I have the distinct honor and privilege as serving as the Dean of the Clinton School of Public Service. So the red building literally right over here. And I have been looking forward to this conversation for a long time because the title is so aptly named, right? Not a gap year, but a leap year. And earlier this morning, we heard about that ability of AmeriCorps to be a springboard. Because I think my frustration with higher ed is that sometimes we see public service as an addition. It's something you do in an internship. It's something you do during a spring break trip. It's something you do, but it's not part of your educational journey. And that's something that this biased sample right here doesn't agree with. This is something that President Clinton, when he left office and was founding his presidential school, said, no, public service is going to be a core part of our curriculum and our pedagogy. So I have with us today people who get it and people who are leading the way in changing higher ed, because as we'll get into a little bit later, there's some problems with higher ed. And I think a lot of those problems can be solved with coming back to the core of what public service is. So a lot to get to. But I wanted to start with you, Secretary King. You wear many hats. You've worn many hats when it comes to education. And so I think in drawing on that broad landscape, helping us understand the synergy, the symbiotic relationship between education and higher ed. So you've been in both as Secretary of Education, but also what does that intersection look like?
Well, first, it's wonderful to be here with all of you to celebrate this moment. I would say, I've always been a champion of national service because I get that one person can be the difference in someone else's life, and I know that from my own journey. Michael talked about his experience with Boys and Girls Club this morning. I grew up in New York City, in Brooklyn. Both my parents passed away when I was a kid. My mom when I was 8, my dad when I was 12. In the period when it was just my dad and me, my dad was struggling with Alzheimer's. Home was incredibly difficult and scary and unstable. And the thing that saved me was a teacher. Alan Osterweil, my teacher in 4th, 5th, 6th grade, I'm still in touch with him. He saved my life. I wouldn't be sitting here if not for him. And so to me, national service at one level is about making sure that for every kid who needs that one person that will be the difference in their lives, we can deliver on that. But the connection to higher education is that if we're serious about higher education's mission of preparing students to participate in civic life, then we have to be serious about students having service experiences. And that can be before they come to college. We want students who've come from AmeriCorps at the State University of New York because we know they're going to be engaged, they're going to have been exposed to diversity, they're going to have leadership experiences. It could be service during the college experience. We just announced the creation of a FAFSA completion corps at SUNY, an AmeriCorps program where our students will help prospective students complete the free application for federal student aid, which unlocks money for college. Last year, New York students left $200 million on the table that they could have gotten if they'd completed the FAFSA. So now we're going to have students at 6 of our campuses helping students complete the FAFSA. That's amazing. Or it could be that students are going on from the college experience directly into service roles. When I was in K-12 work, I was struck by the impact that Teach for America has had all across the country, preparing teachers and principals and superintendents, right? So there's a tremendous synergy here, and I'm just thrilled to be able to celebrate that today.
And I appreciate, Secretary, that you highlighted the various stages at which public service AmeriCorps can touch our students. So I know, Flor, for you, your experience came while you were at college. I know you're a proud Bruin, a proud UCLA Bruin. But actually, before I get to you, I want to congratulate you. I know that you were recently appointed to the board of AmeriCorps, so congratulations on that. But talk to us about that experience. So yours was already in college throughout the 4 years of college. What brought you to that experience? And tell us a little bit about that lived experience throughout those 4 years.
Yeah, well, thank you again for having me as well here. It's an honor to be here, honestly. But yeah, I was lucky enough to have AmeriCorps on my college campus at UCLA. I had not heard of AmeriCorps. I had not heard of Jumpstart, which was the program there. I had heard of financial aid. So I was very anxious. I remember I was looking for the financial aid office at the UCLA campus. And as a first-generation student, I didn't have a family of wealth who could pay for my education. So here I was about to face, big conversation about how are you going to pay for the next 4 years. Of course, I had no idea. I'm going to work. I'm going to work hard, and I'm going to work and do what I can to pay for my education. And it was on my way to the financial aid office, which is in this ugly little basement at the bottom of the campus. Nobody goes there. And on my way there, I came across this bright, colorful, just the opposite room of what the financial aid office looked like. And I remember going in there and saying, what is this place? They had brochures that had pictures of people who looked like me working in the community. There was children's literature everywhere, and there was arts and crafts all over the place. And I was like, this is it. I don't want to go over there. I want to go here. And that was the Jumpstart office. So I was able to go in, ask if they were still hiring. And they were like, we want you to, join us. Please, do you have any experience? And I was like, not really. I volunteered a lot in my community. They're like, perfect. That's perfect. That's what we're looking. And I was like, oh, I don't need a fancy resume or anything. The kids who go to UCLA, they're doing fellowships, all kinds of stuff from age 7. I was like, I've been working in the library for years. And they were like, that's actually exactly what we're looking for. Please join us. And so I was lucky enough to choose, to serve with Jumpstart for all 4 years. And it was my work-study job while I was there. So it could have been easier to just work in the student store. I always thought about it. I was like, I could choose that, but that's also kind of lame. I want something when I'm working with people. I want to be excited when I go to work. I'm excited to, work with kids in the classroom. I'm excited to work with teachers in a capacity I had never thought of. So that was my experience in finding the Jumpstart office, and I chose that again and again for my next 4 years there.
That's awesome.
And again, right, you could have gotten a job catering. I worked university catering. I ate a lot of deli meats throughout college, but that's a different story. But this opportunity to learn in your classroom, but then you're learning outside of the classroom and you're doing something fulfilling. And I think that this is the triple threat that an AmeriCorps experience brings. Now, Mark, I want to turn to you, and you have a number of hats, right? So you were Peace Corps director. You are now, again, a university president. Shameless plug, Mark is also the chair of the Clinton School Dean's Advisory Board. But because of, you bring a different educational and service lens from a couple of different chapters. And so if you can talk to us about how when you're connecting with stakeholders outside of the educational realm, maybe it's with your board, maybe it's with folks in the community, and you're trying to connect the dots of why. Why does it make sense to think of Peace Corps and AmeriCorps and your undergrad or your graduate experience all together?
Well, thank you, Dean, very much. And like this panel, I think I won the lottery to be on this panel, to be on with the chancellor in New York. I call him the chancellor. Nationally, he's the secretary. But I've seen his leadership in New York. And Flora, good luck with the board. Kathy, they're lucky to have her. You have a great board member. And certainly Dean Soto, who I get to work with at the Clinton School. For me, coming into this, and I am truly honored to be here from my lens of service, from Peace Corps to being on the board and as a college president, but also going back 30 years, because I was on the White House staff with Stephanie Street. And I remember the night before the event, called by the chief of staff, because there had been a plane that hit the White House. We had to move the event from one lawn to the other lawn. But coming back here, and the privilege of hearing from the earlier presentations and the bold vision of Michael, that was just awesome to kick us off. I am struck by the moment for higher education and for service, because we have here 30 years in, I think, a demonstrable proof of concept. This is not 1993 anymore. We have studies showing the return on investment. We have storytelling and narratives that buttresses the facts and the record of this brilliant design. So this is called a summit. And I think it's, to me, my morning experience was a real charge because of, I think, what Rai put us on, the kind of the existential threat as well, that we need as service warriors to take very seriously. For me, as a college president, I've seen it in the storytelling, like Flora elucidates and others, from our faculty and staff, from the lived experience of our students, now alums. But I think as a movement, because all these pieces knit together, the Washington Monthly, Paul Glosters is here, has done a brilliant job on making service a ranked item for colleges and universities. And it'll be no coincidence that tomorrow when I return to campus for homecoming weekend, I'll brag on our service ranking. Thank you, Paul, for that. But all these pieces knit together. So I think our ability to be armed with the facts, and they are there, we can absolutely make the case. What we need to also champion is bringing this to scale. To me, that's the only thing that is really, with philanthropy, with the for-profit sector, and with all of us engaged in higher education. So I worry less about our ability to articulate the proof of it, but to be ensured that we're restless for bringing this to scale, because it's too big of an idea, too important of an idea, too successful of an idea, just to come to Little Walk and celebrate 30 years. So.
I'm hearing two things very loud and clear from you, Mark. Scale and pipeline. And in the panel before lunch, we talked about pipeline, and I was very much struck by Alice Kwan, because we tend to think that the private sector is just something on the outside, that those of us that service warriors, I'm going to steal that term, that we do, that's something different. But I think it's that pipeline building to the ones who aren't the usual suspects.
Right.
So I think in terms of us looking to the next 30 years is challenging ourselves to build those pipelines, and I'm the first there, I'm working with you on this, and the scaling of it.
Right.
Now, I want to pivot to an issue that consumes all of us in this nation because it is a national problem, but especially students, which is that of student debt. It's staggering. And it is something that I think really hinders us as a nation, hinders us as students. Still folks who are in their 50s trying to pay off student loans. So Flora, I know you touched on this earlier, but if you could talk to us a little bit about the concrete implications that having the help of AmeriCorps had on you coming out, and in terms of them being able to pursue other pursuits.
Yeah, I think that is, and it still very much is a problem. As I mentioned, being at that kind of institution, you have a variety of jobs like catering, like everything, working at the student store. But knowing that I could have a job that gave me fulfillment and gave me a sense of direction and purpose, knowing that I was somehow contributing to our country, honestly, and not just my community, that was something that stuck out to me, on top of the fact that I was going to get paid probably just as much as someone who was in catering or working at the student store. So that really helped me. And honestly, a bonus was when they told me, and you get a Segal Education Award at the end. I was like, and something? Oh, like I'm already doing so much and I get something at the end. And something about me is I have a very bad memory. So it was a surprise almost every year when I was like, oh, and do you want to use this right now or do you want to use it later? Of course, I was like, later. I'm okay right now. I'm struggling, but I'm okay. I had, on top of AmeriCorps, I had 2 other jobs, sometimes 3 other jobs just to put myself through college. But I never talk about the other jobs. I was always talking about AmeriCorps. But that was something that I looked forward to at the end of the year because, one, I forgot about it. So it was like a nice little surprise. And then at the end, it just kind of sat there. So when I did graduate, and I decided that I wanted to pursue a graduate career, I got an email like, remember, you have this. And I was like, oh my gosh, I totally forgot about this again. Like, this is amazing. So it was just a very nice bonus to everything that we already gain as people who are doing this kind of service, to help me, put myself through graduate school. And it was a totally different walking into the campus than when I did as a freshman going into UCLA. Then I felt like I had nothing. I didn't have any kind of experience. I didn't know where to go. Definitely didn't want to go into the financial aid office. Now going into my graduate career, I had a lot of skills under my belt. I had way more confidence. I had everything that everyone here has talked about, all the skills we get, and I had the Segal Award, which was going to help me.
I want to drill into the Segal Award because it is such a tremendous resource. And in your case, it was this very pleasant surprise year after year. But Mark and Chancellor King, I'm going to switch between Chancellor and Secretary. How do we connect the dots for our students? Because at least my impression is that students don't know about this resource that they have available. So what can we do in our institutions, at the college level, at the system level, to connect the dots and use this as the carrot to then pull into the service sector?
Well, I think there's 2 parts of it. I think there's pre-college, that has import and resonance for students as they're looking at college, but also for afterwards. We had 3 graduates from Hobart and William Smith who are AmeriCorps members in Geneva, the city where the college is located on, engage with the high schools. So there's a duality of ways that this can be. But I think some of the storytelling, and my gosh, you're a graduate, Mayor Rainey gave great testimonial to the importance of it. I think it's, from our point of view in higher education, sort of eternal vigilance for the communications piece, because you rightly beam into a defining issue of higher education cost. What can we be doing? What could we be doing collectively with higher education groups in a more affirmative way and getting that message out? Look at this new FAFSA. I love what you're doing with the forms. with the core that you've created. But I think it's messaging in a clear way the compelling evidence of individuals.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And look, I think I would challenge all of us when we leave here to make a different choice than we've made before. You know, AmCorps is going to organize us over the coming weeks to push back against absurd proposed cuts to AmeriCorps. And we'll spend a lot of energy saying, protect this program and making the case for why it's good. Maybe we should shift our strategy and say, it's so good, we need to grow it 10x. I don't want to talk to you about cuts. I want to talk to you about why we need to grow it 10x. And I'll tell you, for us at SUNY, we're going to have students in this FAFSA completion cohort. We could have thousands. We have 360,000 students across our 64 campuses. We could have tens of thousands of students who would gladly do exactly what Flor did, who would say, if I could have the chance to tutor, if I could have the chance to work on climate issues and help me pay for college, sign me up. Our tuition at SUNY is just over $7,000, right? The Segal Award can make college very accessible for students. And so we should be pushing in that direction. And we should be saying to folks, our biggest national problems can be solved by mobilizing young people. Folks mentioned earlier the Biden administration's National Partnership for Student Success. We know how bad COVID was for our K-12 students. We know how many students are significantly behind because of the disruption to schools. And we know tutoring works to help students make up tremendous ground. We have 11 of our SUNY campuses that are part of that National Partnership for Student Success because our students want to help solve that problem. They want to help young people succeed. So I think in the coming weeks, collectively, we've got to say, we're not just celebrating how great the last 30 were, we want the next 30 to be about getting a lot closer to that initial vision of 500,000 students, right? And that's right, that's right.
And could I just double click to that, to Colonel Lang's point, because it's knit very much into this messaging point, and a recommendation of a commission on national public and community service that Alan Casey and I served on, and that is this notion of joint recruiting. If there was this new Times Square joint recruiting center for the military, for Peace Corps, for AmeriCorps, think of the shared information that could be exposed to all students. If the selective service, which is still a requirement in the United States, had a really sophisticated portal where all the various streams of service could be accessed for the military, for AmeriCorps, for Peace Corps, that blending, I do think, is part of the next 30 years. How do we broadly think about it? If the White House had an office of service that put a focus on this in joining the ethos of service, all of those things could, in many ways, get some of the messaging out on loans, but also the opportunities, myriad of opportunities there are for service.
That's that scale piece.
Scale, yeah.
How do we scale? I also want to shine the light on what educational institutions can do. So from where I sit, when I came in close to 2 years ago, I realized the power of the Segal grants. I realized what a springboard they were for our students, for our alumni, those of you who are here today. I am so proud of the work of our AmeriCorps alum, of our Clinton School alum. So how can I put my money where my mouth is? And so myself, together with a number of institutions across the country, we not just match the Segal Award. So yeah, great, it's money, it's that pleasant surprise, but I will match you. But wait, maybe I'll double match you. And I'm very proud to say that through substantial help, through the Clinton Foundation, through the development work, we're in some cases able to triple match. Wow. And that should be the norm, right? Because we're making an investment in folks who have already proven their commitment to service. And so I think I want to talk about how we as higher ed institutions can be creative about incentivizing. Like, yes, we want to get the budget increased. We don't just want to fight for it to be recovered, but grow it. But I'm going to put you on the spot, Chancellor, because I know that you're doing some pretty cool things. And I'm going to ask you to share some of those pretty cool things that your campuses, 64 campuses? 60, I think the largest system in the nation, to push the envelope in this respect. So if you could use this forum to share with us.
Yeah, make a little news. So earlier this week, our Board of Trustees voted to waive application fees for all AmeriCorps alums across all of our institutions. And so every AmeriCorps alum will be able to apply for free to 7 of our campuses, so we're very excited about that. And the other piece of exciting news is that 15 of our campuses have committed to become schools of national service. And so they will recognize AmeriCorps service in a number of ways. Some will provide scholarships towards supporting that match. Some will provide an admissions preference for students who have participated in AmeriCorps. Some will provide credit for AmeriCorps experience through prior learning assessment. So the faculty will evaluate what students have done through their AmeriCorps experience and award credit for it. And some will provide a guarantee for the leap year. So saying to students, you're admitted now, but if you want to go take a year of service, that spot will be here for you when you complete your year of service.
So, this is where we should be going. And I want to center on the credit piece. I'm going to get boring academic-y on you. But if you can take 3 credits, 6 credits, 9 credits, and apply those toward X requirement. At the Clinton School, a third of our curriculum is based on field service, that you're working out in the community, both here domestically and also internationally. And the first part about that is the experience. I mean, talk about an education. But the second piece comes down to dollars and cents, because it costs X amount, depending on the institution, for a 3-credit class. So you're killing 2 birds with 1 stone, right? So you're not paying an additional amount for the credits. It's already baked in, and you are learning by doing. And I think that what's so core to me about the Clinton School is that we're very proud about preparing thinkers and doers. So if it were up to me, all colleges and universities would do this, but we'll work on that. I want to pivot and stay with you, Chancellor, on landmark decision that came down this summer on affirmative action. And this has really changed the landscape of higher ed as we have known it for the last half century. So I know that through the AmeriCorps lens, through the service lens, you are working to assuage the harm that came about to our institutions through that ruling. So if you could talk to us about this. I think this is also a model nationally.
Yeah, look, I think a huge threat to the country is a Supreme Court decision that took away the tool of race-conscious admissions. It matters to the health of the country to have diversity in our leadership, whether it's leadership in politics or in business or in the nonprofit sector. And the only way we get there is to make sure that our higher ed institutions are diverse. And many in the higher ed sector are petrified. I mean, if you look at the data from the states that have banned the use of race-conscious admissions, their numbers of students of color dropped significantly, particularly African-American students. And so the question for us was, how can we at the State University of New York ensure that we are vindicating our values in spite of the Supreme Court decision? How can we, within the law, ensure that we are advancing diversity, equity, and inclusion? And so we adopted a system-wide policy around admissions to say, we want our campuses to look at whether or not a student is low income, whether or not they're first in their family to graduate from college, whether or not they are a veteran, whether or not they've overcome adversity in their school or community, or whether they are an AmeriCorps alum, because all of those are race-neutral mechanisms to make sure that we have a diverse student population. And so when our colleges look at students who are applying from City Year, for example, they should say, oh, well, this is a student who's both more likely to have had experience with diversity through their service, so they're going to come and bring those values to our campus, and it is a way for us to make sure that we're reaching out to students who might not otherwise have that pathway to college. So we're very committed that we are not going to slide backwards. There are folks who want us all to slide backwards, but we are not going back. We're committed to diversity, equity, inclusion, and part of how we'll get there is through our partnership with AmeriCorps.
I appreciate that. No, and that's the type of thinking that higher ed needs now. Public opinion is not too hot on higher ed, and it's because of that sliding back. So I think it's incumbent upon us here to push it forward. And on that note, Flor, how do we connect? We have so much goodness. We have so much goodness in terms of our public service programs, so much goodness in terms of our campus entities, but our students, our young people getting it? Are they getting the message? To go forward 30 years, let's be critical. What do we need to do to better connect with that next generation of AmeriCorps leaders?
Yeah, I think, years ago I decided to become a psychology student, and then I just kind of never stopped learning on the topic. And so I read a lot of books about social psychology with young people and, neuropsychology. And it's interesting to me that one of the main foundations at the end of almost every one of these books is this core concept that I think AmeriCorps actually embodies. And it's the fact that we as human beings are good. Inherently, we're good and we want to help people. We're naturally altruistic, we're good. Something like hate is a learned behavior and it's a learned sentiment. So I think the good is already there, especially with young people. I think we naturally want to help our communities. We see these issues and there's no one better to fix it than you. If you're in your community and you're seeing something over and over, there's no better expert, there's no one that's gonna come in and say, I'm gonna fix all your problems, or there might be people who do that, but they're not the right people for the job, right? It's you, and I feel like young people know that already, and we have this momentum that has been building up for a long time, and especially looking at the past couple years that we've experienced as a nation, I feel like those sentiments and behaviors of hate, it's more fuel, honestly, to do better and to do good. And I feel like I see that with young people all the time. So I think that is there. I think it's a matter of getting the word out, like everyone here has said today, of maybe not putting the Jumpstart office at the basement of the campus, right? Okay. To be here with my fellow panelists is so amazing to me. I was telling them, I actually never met my chancellor or my president. Like, it's something that you're so far removed from, but the idea of mobilizing as a higher education institution, it's also the same thing for young people. I should have gone to the chancellor's office and been like, why is this at the bottom? If AmeriCorps is on a campus, it's an asset. You shouldn't be hiding it. It should be at the very front of everything that you're doing, So I think, like I said, the good is already there. People want to help. And the second point of all these social psychology books is that there comes a point in everyone's either career or age where people eventually will look back and think, what have I done to contribute to this society? It doesn't matter if you're in consulting or if you're in public service. There's always this point where people will turn around, usually reflective, maybe at the end of their lives, who knows, and they turn around and they say, what have I done to contribute to the common good? And that is something that is fueling many young people already. I mean, to be here with Domingo, I don't know if he's still here, but like that is a prime example of, I never thought I could do this, but here I am, and I'm gonna do it even better now. We have that as a society, and we have that in our youth. So it's recognizing for everyone who's on the other side of, we already have this, how can we do it better? How can we lift them up even more? And I think the programs that AmeriCorps has to have, it's definitely a launch pad. It's a stepping stone. I know it was for me of, I did this. What can I do now? Like, what can I do with everything here? So I think, to answer your question plainly, it's already there. It's just a matter of supporting our youth to get there and helping them. When we have questions of, the policy in place, I mean, we have amazing people in the world who don't have a PhD. They didn't go to college. We need to start rethinking of the way that we see leaders, because there are loud people who talk a lot. They're not leaders. We have very quiet people who are the strongest leaders in the room. So we need to start rethinking of what that looks like with young people and start to, fit the frame to help them get there.
So, I could not agree more about the loudest voices in the room. Yes. The pipeline piece that Mark brought up earlier, I think the step before it is harnessing the frustration and the inner goodness of all of us. And we have been through very rough moments in our society over the last couple of years. So using that to good, harnessing that. And on that point, Mark, I want to reflect on something President Clinton opened with, and this is something that is part and parcel to his vision of the world, the bridging mentality. He said, you know what? Our differences should be assets, not liabilities. That's where we're going, but in an era of fake news, in an era of extreme polarization, I mean, just what we saw in the last couple of weeks in the House of Representatives, I feel that our civil discourse muscle has grown weak. How do we turn to AmeriCorps and connect those dots between building up that muscle and bridging and meeting President Clinton's ideal?
No, I had the same reaction listening to the president this morning, because that was the genius that he had in establishing it. And while it was important in 1993, I think we'd all agree, in 2023 America, all the incumbent pieces of both higher education and then service could not be more important than ever for our democracy, given the challenges of polarization, communications, information flow. So the service experience before college, after college, Peace Corps volunteers, military service informs communities in such different ways, because they have been a part of a journey across difference in the myriad of spectrum of indices of difference that you might want to harbor, but in common pursuit of a public good. And that prepares them. It prepares them for the classroom. It prepares them for professional choices. It prepares them for graduate study and the world of work. And somehow the skill building piece of this service that I hear in Michael's narration of what they're thinking about and the range of different policy areas that the good work of AmeriCorps members, but also at this moment and at this time in our nation's history. I think many Americans see and witness the polarization, Vicki, that you mentioned. And what is the solve? What can be done? I think for many of us, the experience drawn from the military over many decades, certainly the Peace Corps, and now AmeriCorps, we have, again, a proof of concept. And to me, given the democracy challenges that we have, a fix of this is expansion of service. That's a message we have to carry. I think we have responsibilities in higher education, but everyone, from one's ability to explain and narrate their exposure to it, because we're searching for something in our country. This is this moment. And I think given the challenges of the budget, there's a great piece that I would commend to you in time.com that Amora wrote with Rai that's really taught me a lot and showed me a lot about the current challenge in Congress. I think that should be our motivation, leaving Little Rock, certainly, but also this longer term and longer gestation of the atrophy of some of our democratic skills, this discourse challenge that you have. But again, to me, it centrals back to the possibilities of service.
And the fact that we have a trained force of good that knows how to engage in civil discourse, is engaging with diverse populations. I mean, we have people who are ready to bridge. We're starting to come to the end of the session, and what I'm going to copy the CGI model. And I haven't told you this, so you're going to have to think about it on the spot. But I was thinking about this. What am I going to do to ensure the strength and success of AmeriCorps for for the next 30 years? What is my commitment to action? And I'll start to give you guys a couple seconds lead time to think about this. But I mentioned earlier that we are very proud that we started doing double and triple matches of the Segal Award. I want to be able to expand that. So I think that when I am talking to folks who are interested in investing in impact, is talking about AmeriCorps and using that as a hook of saying, like, this is what you can do to support. We have our graduate students who are taking that leadership to the next level. So I think from my vantage point as the dean, this is what I am going to go out and pound the pavement doing. The second commitment is I'm going to be working really hard with, I have Jennifer Cobb here. We've already started conversations about, so I'm on record here for this, started conversations about how we can count credit from AmeriCorps into our graduate program. I mean, the bureaucracy that's going to be involved with that is going to be a nightmare. But you know what? You got to start somewhere. So I think that for me, it's really codifying that commitment because I want to continue to grow this pipeline and this scale. All right, who's next? Who wants to volunteer? Flor.
I can go. I think, thinking about where I stand today and the platform that I have, whether it's here or in the classroom with the students I work with in Los Angeles, I think for me, it's using my voice, honestly, and that's something that I can stand by. I think reminding students that, and young people, that you don't have to wait until you graduate to make changes that you want to see. You don't need a PhD to go do all the amazing things that you want to see happen. I think that's something I wish, actually, I was told that as a child, and I think it definitely instills a different kind of confidence when it comes from someone that you see as a teacher or as a colleague or as a mentor for everyone here representing City Year. It means so much more than if someone like your uncle, has been telling you that. It's different from when a teacher tells you. I think a lot of people today spoke about, you name-dropped a teacher who changed your life. Everyone remembers that one teacher who changed their life, So I think that's my promise of just reminding young people that they don't have to wait until this certain age or this certain degree to make those changes. Because, if you do AmeriCorps, you're going to find out two things. You're probably going to find out something you really like and maybe something that you don't like, which is just as important. Yes. I love working with people, but I hate math, and I need to know that about myself. You also need to know what you like and what you don't like, but you're likely going to find what you're passionate about also in your experience. So at the end of the day, you're going to come out a different person from when you started, and I think that's what I stand by in using my voice.
Well, you are an incredible example of this, Flor, so thank you.
Two things that I'm going to do. The third, I'm going to ask you to do it with me.
Okay.
So the first is, I said 15 of our campuses have committed to be schools of national service, but we've got 64. So I got to work on all the rest to make sure that we make progress. Second, I think SUNY will be a better system. Our campuses will be stronger communities, and our classroom conversations will be better if we have thousands more AmeriCorps alumni in our classrooms. So I'm going to work really hard to make sure we recruit as many AmeriCorps alums to our classrooms as possible. So need all your help with that. And then the third, which is something I hope we can do together, the federal government doesn't move as fast as we would like on things, and hasn't moved fast enough in these 30 years to grow AmeriCorps. We should push really hard and try to get them to do, 200,000 of the 500. But that's still a gap. So then we need to get states and local government to step up as well. And I know, Governor Newsom has stepped up in California with a California Service Corps. We need a competition amongst governors. And I'm trying to advocate for this in New York. We need governors and legislatures competing to see how quickly can they scale up state-level service corps. We've got a county executive in Ulster County who's created a climate corps for the county. We need county executives and mayors to step up. And it may be small at first, but if 1,000 county execs around the country, just started with 50 core members each, right? Then we'd have 50,000 more core members. So let's go do that. Let's go persuade people to not just wait for Congress, push Congress, but then just start on our own in communities around the country.
Thank you.
Love that. Well, I am tempted to say what I should do when I go back is try to keep up with John King in New York City. It's making me feel kind of bad. But it is inspiring what you do. And I think for all of us in our own way, my sector is small, liberal arts and sciences, private institutions. So what can we be doing within that sector that has an important place within higher education? Adding our voice, I think there is going to be a looming battle, right? And it's not just battle for this budget, it's battle for this, to me, the scale question of how do we take 30 years of proven concept and move it forward. Part of it is the factual basis and getting the data points, which Michael, I'm sure, is working hard on. Part of it is the storytelling. I was touched by John's observation of his teacher. And when I was director of the Peace Corps, I met with a minister of education in West Africa. And he said, the first American I ever met and the best teacher I ever had was my Peace Corps volunteer teacher 30 years ago. He gave me the gentleman's name. I came back to Washington, called him up. He's in Falmouth, Massachusetts. I said, this minister of education who's setting educational policy for his country, his image of the best teacher is you. There was this long pause. He said, my gosh, I have no idea who that is. There were 62 kids in my class. I'll check the picture. So it's kind of the point to our city year members here, AmeriCorps members, you don't always know in the moment. Not every teacher gets to educate a Secretary of Education. But all of us have that opportunity to engage in the storytelling in this proof. So I come out of this session, and I appreciate the question, Vicki, of joining with you in my work at the Clinton School for your ambition, but also in my sector of higher education and within New York with John's leadership to think with ambition for the future. It's not enough we will get through this battle in the near term for budget, but to honor President Clinton's vision and bold vision and proven vision for the future.
I want to end this panel by coming back and tweaking the title of the panel. It referenced not a gap year, but a leap year. But we also know that it is leap years in the case of Floor. So understanding how we can support those leap years or leap year. And I think we have all asserted this. And it's our charge going forward to scale, to continue to scale, whether that is pushing Congress, pushing our governors, pushing at the county level. It is building out those pipelines, talking to the students, letting them see your individual success stories, putting the money, the resources where they're at. So there's no one way we're going to increase the scale. There are a couple of different ways that we're doing that, all of us here together, and I think that has been so inspiring for me to be up here with all of you and engage with this community in terms of taking this army of goodness and pressing it forward. Thank you all.
Please welcome Dr. Jay Barth, Director of the Clinton Presidential Library.
Good afternoon, everyone. As we're discussing today, AmeriCorps is about a lot of things. It's about empowerment of individuals through enhanced access to education opportunities. It's about healthier communities, particularly when they are facing moments of crisis created by neglect across years or a more immediate disaster. And it's about bridging differences in our society as diverse individuals come together on teams. But at its core, AmeriCorps is service. And it would be impossible not to commemorate AmeriCorps' 30 years without a real service opportunity this week. I think the many of you who will join us tomorrow as we carry out a variety of service projects in and around Little Rock's 12th Street corridor. We will come together at First Baptist Church Highland Park tomorrow morning and then fan out across a series of projects in that neighborhood. We will pack and distribute food at Stevens Community School, which is served by City Year Little Rock, and at the University of Arkansas for Medical Sciences 12th Street Cafe Food Pantry. We will prepare food for distribution to young people and care for the outside learning spaces around the Hillary Rodham Clinton Children's Library and Learning Center. And we will promote menstrual equity by packing and distributing period products, working with the Period Poverty Project. An array of partners have come together to make all this happen. Thank all of you who can join us for being a part of this day of action, starting tomorrow morning, as we continue our commemoration of AmeriCorps at 30. And finally, as director of the Clinton Presidential Library and Museum, I'd be remiss if I didn't remind you all of two projects my team has worked on in recent months as part of this commemoration of AmeriCorps at 30 years. First, as Stephanie Street mentioned earlier, on this floor, just across the hall inside the east door of the museum, you will see a pop-up exhibit highlighting some key documents and artifacts related to AmeriCorps' creation and its early years. And second, our team has developed a wonderful digital library exhibit, Learning to Serve, Serving to Learn, AmeriCorps during the Clinton administration. It tells the story of those early years through the records of our collection. And importantly, like all our digital exhibits, it includes education resources to empower teachers to use these materials in classrooms to help students think about national service and its meaning in their own lives. Again, on behalf of everybody here at the Clinton Presidential Center, we are so glad you're here, and we can't wait to see you again. Thank you all.
Please turn your attention to the screen for a message from U.S. Senator from Delaware, Chris Coons, co-chair of the National Service Congressional Caucus.
Hi, I'm U.S. Senator Chris Coons of Delaware, and I'm honored to join this important celebration of AmeriCorps to say a few words about how much this program has meant to me. First, I'd like to thank all the distinguished panelists and guests, many of whom are AmeriCorps alumni or currently serving members, and who I know together have delivered a lively and thoughtful conversation about the future of the National Service Movement. To my friend Michael Smith, thank you for your talented and skilled stewardship of this beloved program. And I'd especially like to thank President Bill Clinton for not only hosting this event at the Clinton Presidential Library, but for having had the vision to create AmeriCorps during your first term in office. Mr. President, because of you, more than 1 million Americans have lifted up countless lives across our great country, making a difference and inspiring others along the way. We are a better nation today because we have AmeriCorps. And for that, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. My own involvement with AmeriCorps goes back almost to the very beginning. In 1993, I was working at the national headquarters of the I Have a Dream Foundation with Eugene Lang in New York City. I Have a Dream is a nationwide program that helps low-income students make the academic journey from elementary school all the way to college. And when President Clinton launched AmeriCorps, I saw this as a great opportunity for our national network. I worked tirelessly with a group of close friends, pulled together a grant application, and launched our first ever national partnership between the I Have a Dream Foundation and AmeriCorps. Ultimately, we had 150 members across 10 cities. And recruiting and training and supporting those members was one of the most rewarding public service experiences I've ever had. It was a transformational experience for our foundation and the services we could provide to the dreamers, the children we were serving, and their families. It had a lasting impact on the young people who served with us as AmeriCorps members, and for me, it changed how I saw and related to my community and to service. I also ultimately met my wife through service on the Volunteerism and Service Commission on the state of Delaware. So AmeriCorps in so many ways changed my life, just as it has changed many others, both the members in its ranks, the people and communities they serve. What made that possible is the close relationship between AmeriCorps and locally based nonprofit partners. These projects are truly community-oriented and community-grounded. My home state of Delaware alone, today we have more than 1,200 AmeriCorps members serving across dozens of projects, from tutoring school children to responding to disasters to rebuilding homes to helping our veterans. AmeriCorps continues to bring people together and make a difference. Over the past 30 years, AmeriCorps has received strong bipartisan support at the federal, state, and local levels because we know national service has the power to break down barriers and build bridges of understanding, which today we need more than ever. Sustaining this bipartisan support hasn't always been easy, just as President Clinton and his team had to fight to save AmeriCorps in the early 1990s. We've had to work again to save it in recent years here in Washington. But here we are 30 years later and still going strong. Let this celebration serve as a call to action. We all must continue working so that AmeriCorps members can continue their great work across our country. That means redoubling our efforts to expand the reach of and funding for AmeriCorps so even more of a difference can be made. So to all of those who support AmeriCorps, who have served as AmeriCorps members, or who hope to serve in the future, happy 30th anniversary. And thank you for letting me play a small role in honoring you and what we've all accomplished together through the national service movement over these past 3 decades.